Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking about the 2012 Doctor Who Christmas special, The Snowmen. This is, of course, Jenna Louise's Jenna Louise Coleman's full-on official debut as the Doctor's new companion. This is the kickoff to the new status quo for Doctor Who, complete with a brand new title sequence, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, and just sort of the new status quo, I guess you could say, in a way, for what's going to be going on with Doctor Who from now on. And I gotta say, there's a lot of strong points in this episode, but there's also some weak points going on. But at the end of the day, this is a pretty decent story. But let's get right into it. And as I said, let's start with the new opening credits. I don't really have a whole lot to say about these. They're a bit flashier than what we've been seeing before. And but the thing that I really like about it was you do get to see that brief glimpse of Matt Smith's face as we're flying through space along with the credits. This, of course, being a nod to actually the majority of the old Doctor Who openings from the previous Doctor Who era before the revival. I believe they started doing that with what was that? John Pertwee, I believe they started doing that, and it was just what they did in the title sequences for Doctor Who until the series wrapped up back in 1989 with Sylvester McCoy. And I've always loved that. I always thought it was just such a really nice touch. It just added so much, and of course you could instantly, of course, tell which Doctor you were dealing with in those credits. So I do really enjoy that they went back and did that. And of course, this is not the only nod to the previous incarnations of the Doctor and things that have happened in the very long and storied history of Doctor Who, which has been around for almost 50 years. Coming up next year, it will indeed be 50 years of Doctor Who. So, we'll talk little bit about that more later on. But yeah, I definitely enjoy that. Now, let's get right into it. And right from the start, we also see what I think you could easily make a case as some more nods to the continuity of Doctor Who. And one of the first things okay, let me try and start and speak slowly so I can articulate my point clearly. The first impression that we're given of Clara, once we get to see a few minutes of her, seems to me to be extremely reminiscent of Rose and how we were introduced to her at the start of Christopher Eccleston's run. Now keep in mind, notice that she works at a place called the Rose and Crown. I can't help but think that the inclusion of the word rose there had to have been deliberate. And if you notice, she's immediately presented as this kind of working class waitress girl, and again, working class girl, sort of like Rose. She was, we see her. She's obviously a waitress at some inn, and this is not the first time that the Doctor has taken on a waitress as a companion. We had Audrey, the one episode Wonder Girl, still at least has provisional companion status in my book. And if you are familiar with the older shows, you know that the Seventh Doctor first met his companion Ace when she was working as a waitress on Ice World. I gotta say, I'm quite the fan of Ace, so I really do enjoy that. But of course, there's more to Clara than meets the eye. And very quickly on in this episode, we get to see some very interesting romantic tension between her and the Doctor. Again, this is something that was very, very intrinsic in regards to Rose's character and Amy's character as well, and Martha's character. You're noticing a little bit of a theme that has kind of been running with the girls that the Doctor hangs around with of course Donna being the very notable exception. I'm always reminded whenever I see this stuff of the moment when David Tennant kind of had gotten kissed by Rose's character, and he just takes for a moment, kind of runs a hand through his hair and says, "Yep, still got it." That amused me to no end. That's actually one of my favorite David Tennant moments ever. But anyway, continuing on. So we also get to see the return of some old favorite characters from the previous episodes. We get to see Vastra, Jenny Flint, and Strax, and it's made 100% clear just what's going on with Vastra and Jenny. They are indeed married. Not that this is really going to come as a surprise to anyone, but I'm kind of glad the show just basically dropped any and all pretenses that these two were an item. Strax. Let's talk about these guys' characters. We're going to get into more into about what's going on with Clara and the Doctor later on, but since these are our side characters, let's just kind of hop right into them. Vastra and Jenny are, just themselves as always. I sort of like how Vastra is more or less, in a way, sort of the leader of these three. She's the one who speaks most to the Doctor most closely as an equal. And, of course, that makes sense. Strax is there to very much be the Doctor's Watson. And he's basically even called that in this episode. So, that is, I did like that. And I did like that, they are, in a way, serving the function that companions usually do, is that they try to look after the Doctor, they worry about him, but at the end of the day, they can't really be companions in that in the way that the Doctor needs, and which is sort of a shame because honestly, it's not as if the Doctor hasn't traveled with three companions at once before. The Fifth Doctor did a lot of bopping around, as did the Fourth Doctor with Tegan, Adric, and Nyssa. Actually, those three and the Doctor were one of my all-time favorite combos of Doctors and characters. And yes, I do like Adric. Sue me. But, I really think that the Doctor bouncing around the universe with those three would be just endlessly entertaining. But, of course, at the end of the day, Doctor Who is most often about a story about the Doctor and his dealings with humanity. And, there's no hiding that Strax and Vastra are not human, except very minimally. So, I think that might have to sort of be confined to maybe some of the Doctor Who comic books that are coming out from IDW that I've heard are pretty good. But anyway, so I do like that Strax, who for the most part is really played for comedy in this episode, when things get into a situation where he's comfortable with, and that is, of course, combat and violence, he's immediately shown to be extremely competent and really knows what he's doing. And I think that's important because otherwise there's absolutely no reason to take Strax seriously as a character. And of course, Vastra and Jenny's credentials as characters who should be taken seriously has already been established. Although I do have to take a moment to say that, hello, I'm a lizard woman from the dawn of time and this is my wife. Oh man, that was funny. And I did like the references to Vastra as the veiled detective. That just reeks of stuff to be explored in the expanded Doctor Who universe. Now, let's talk about. I'm kind of going. Speak slowly and calmly. Okay. So I'm just over here looking at my notes. And let's talk about some of the nods and shoutouts that we saw during this episode to other things. The most obvious one being that winter is coming being said a couple of times. This being a very obvious reference to Game of Thrones. So I do enjoy another series that I incidentally review. I do enjoy that the good folks at Doctor Who are giving a shout out to another very, very excellent series that, like Doctor Who, features many, many very talented British actors. We also got to see Matt Smith running around in a Sherlock Holmes costume. If you're not familiar with this little bit of new information, on the new Sherlock show, Matt Smith actually did audition to be on there, not as Sherlock, but as Watson. So, a little bit of a nod to Matt Smith's career there. Now, the real big kick here for a lot of people is probably going to be Richard E. Grant as Dr. Simeon. Seriously? Simeon? Monkey? They couldn't have come up with a better name for him than that? But anyway, Richard E. Grant has a decent history with Doctor Who. He's appeared in as the Doctor in Doctor Who stage play, a rather comedic one that actually several other well-known British actors, I believe, like Rowan Atkinson and Hugh Grant have done. And it's basically kind of a Doctor Who satire called The Curse of Fatal Death. I'm afraid I don't really know much about it beyond that. But he was also the voice of the Doctor in a web series, a Flash animation web series that was put out by the BBC that was basically intended to be the continuation of Doctor Who. And he was the voice of the Ninth Doctor. Now, this was in no way, shape, or form a Doctor who looked anything like Christopher Eccleston. It didn't last all that long, and this was not too awful long before they eventually did the modern live-action revival, and that version of the Doctor was ultimately declared to be non-canon. But still, it is really, well, it is a really nice nod to the overall continuity and universe of Doctor Who that they brought him back, and here he gets to sort of match wits with the Doctor. So, I'm sure for the really hardcore Doctor Who fans, people who are a lot more hardcore than I am, I've only seen like a few minutes of that, and I honestly barely even recall the web series. It's certainly a big nod to them. Now, let's talk about. Oh yeah, there's one other. I'm sure this had to have been a shout out. Was when we go to the park and the the TARDIS has an invisible ladder there. I can't help but think that this was a big nod to Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. Seriously, if the Doctor had said, remember where we parked, I would have died laughing. Now, again, that could just be a coincidence, but that's what went through my mind when I saw that scene. So I thought I'd share that with you guys. Now, I did like that scene, speaking of it, because it really does bring back another theme that we have seen since the show came back in 2005, and it's another one that was also extremely strong in the stories of Amy and in the stories of Rose, and that is presenting the Doctor as kind of a character in a fairy tale. I mean, he lives in a cloud in a box on top of a cloud that you go by climbing a magic staircase. I mean, really, the Doctor is really presented as the sort of character out of a fairy tale. I mean, Clara even uses him as sort of a fairy tale character to talk to the children that she's in charge of. And I actually kind of approve of this take on the Doctor, because it's about Doctor Who at the end of the day is about a guy who travels around in time and space in a big blue box. I mean, if that's not basically the stuff of fairy tales, I don't really know what is. I mean, sure, there's aliens and science and all this other stuff, but Doctor Who is realistic science fiction about as much as Star Wars is. At the end of the day, Star Wars is science fantasy, and I think you could pretty much put Doctor Who in there, and it really wouldn't be that too far off. But again, it presents the Doctor as this kind of a fairy tale figure, as this sort of romantic figure. Again, things that were very reminiscent of Amy and Rose's interactions with the Doctor. Now, I guess since I brought them up, let's talk about Amy, since obviously her and Rory's spirit is very much in the background of this episode. I mean, if you're even paying attention, when the Doctor is reading his book, he's actually wearing Amy's glasses from The Angels Take Manhattan, which I thought, again, was a very nice touch. But once again, we pick up with the Doctor, and very much like the Ninth Doctor, he's really divorced himself from the universe. But it's actually slightly different in that the Ninth Doctor had really just sort of given up on everything and everybody. He really had just kind of was this post-traumatic stress disorder guy who had a lot of anger in him, was not dealing well with the death of the Time Lords and all the things that happened to him during the Time War. Now the Doctor is essentially gone and divorced himself from not just the galaxy, but especially from humanity. Although exactly why he did that, why he would choose to hang around over London if he wanted to be away from everybody, is a little bit of a mystery. He could have just gone to some empty, isolated planet in the middle of nowhere and just sat around and read books on his butt, reading books for the rest of eternity. But whatever, right? But this is, in a way, the Doctor is kind of going through that post-traumatic stress disorder. Not like what he suffered from the Time War, but from the loss of Amy and Rory. And again, this is just so extremely reminiscent of where we picked up with Christopher Eccleston. And not that that's bad. I mean, this is certainly a very entertaining episode, but I just can't help but feel that we're kind of retreading old ground here. Now, it's a well done retread, but I really can't honestly say that this isn't something that we haven't seen from new modern Doctor Who before. Now, of course, the big thing here, the crux of this episode, the stuff with the Snowmen really is just incidental. It's Deus Ex Machina to really get the Doctor back involved, to get Clara onto the stage. But it is like what we saw with the Christopher Eccleston with the plastic critter, whatever the heck it was called. I'm not even going to bother to go look it up. It was really just there to kind of get the Doctor involved again. And in that, it succeeds. And just kind of slowly seeing the Doctor grudgingly come back online is really quite a joy. And you can even see it in Matt Smith's face when he's screwing around with the puppet and all this, and it even admits that he's kind of missed this part of his life. But some things like this are not all fun and games. There is pain. There is the realization that he's going to have to deal with it. He can't hide in his little blue box anymore. He has to deal with what has happened to him, with his loss, with his pain. And even more difficult, he has to find a way to move on. The moment where the Doctor is looking in the mirror and he realizes that his bow tie is crooked. It's an enormous symbol for where the Doctor is now as a person. He has gone off course. And this is all about getting the Doctor back where he belongs. And just the way he says, bow ties are cool. And also, take a look at the TARDIS when we first get a good glimpse of the outside of it. It's beat up and stained. There's paint peeling off it, which is pretty extraordinary contrast to when we last saw the TARDIS, when it seemed to be in extremely good shape, very well cared for, very well maintained. Of course, we do get to see the new TARDIS interior. Again, a Doctor Who tradition to occasionally redesign the TARDIS, particularly whenever a new Doctor takes over or whenever there's a new major shift in the series. And I have to say that I really, really quite like this one. It's very streamlined, it has a little bit of what I would consider a bit of an Art Deco influence, which I like because I'm very into the Art Deco style. I love it. And it has those panels that are all over the place. Reminds me of the Stargate. Excuse me. From the Stargate series, which again, very fitting for Doctor Who, and I love the way the patterns just sort of expand all around. It really does make it feel more like the inside of some very strange spaceship rather than, the house of some weird dude. I guess is the best way that I can put it. But getting back to the characters. Of course, we get to see, many of those really great moments with, the Doctor being the Doctor, really Matt Smith being the 11th Doctor. And by the end of it, when he's really embraced his role as the Doctor once again, when he's screwing around with and sort of mocking Simeon and dealing with the snow globe from hell, or whatever you want to call that. It really is the Doctor as we know him. He's really come back, and that's of course a real treat to see. But speaking of that scene with Simeon and the snow globe, I have to say that I did notice that a lot, slowly and clearly, that one of the underlying themes that's it's really something you're probably only gonna. It is basically outright stated, but you really have to kind of be looking for stuff like this. Is that this episode, while it has a lot going on, it also does take some time to sort of basically condemn Victorian values. Now, I'm American, so exactly why the this there would be such a severe condemnation of Victorian values is it's not entirely lost on me. I mean, I do know have some understanding of that particular time in history, what people in those days believed, in regards to women's place in society and sexuality and relate race and religion and all this other stuff. I'm not going to claim to be an expert in any way, but I think obviously British people are going to be much more in tune with what those values and beliefs were, just like as an American, I would have a better understanding of what people in America in the late 1800s would believe than probably people in other countries would. So I think that that on a foreign audience, exactly why the values of that time would have been just basically so bad. Yeah, again, it's something that's kind of going to be a little bit lost on a lot of people. But I think the overall intention is made clear that the way society worked in that time, the way of values and things like that, really contributed to just people being unnecessarily distant from the people that they loved, from being very judgmental against people who were different, of being very narrow-minded and slow to open their hearts. And of course, that's ultimately what leads Simeon to his downfall. But we'll talk about him a little bit more in a bit. Let me see here. Oh yeah, let's continue talking about the Doctor before we move on to Clara. Now, one thing that I did really enjoy was the Doctor says, "I never know why, I only know who." And frankly, again, this is really very much going back to the idea of the Doctor as a fairy tale character. I mean, there are so many logical questions you could bring up about the people the Doctor chooses to have travel with him. But if you just sort of say it like this, the Doctor doesn't really understand why he invites certain people to travel with him, he just knows who he should invite. Well, it doesn't really address those issues in a logical fashion, but it's something that emotionally feels right. And I don't really consider this a cheat. At the end of the day, as I said, Doctor Who is really more of a science fantasy than it is science fiction. And in a science fantasy, you can get away with things like that. It just, as I said, simply feels emotionally true. I can buy into the Doctor just going on his instinct that certain people are worthy, are of coming with him, are the kind of people who can provide him with what he needs, which is not just companionship. It's, as I've said in some of my other reviews, one of the reasons that I believe the Doctor has companions, he has people who travel along with him, is to remind him of his own flaws, to help keep him grounded, to help keep him from becoming too aloof. It all goes back, as I've said, to Ian Chesterton back with the days of the first Doctor, when he really stood up to the Doctor and prevented the Doctor from flat out killing a guy. And it was really in that moment when this ancient and powerful being from a race of Time Lords saw a simple human being stand up to him, say he was wrong, and realize that yes, he was in fact wrong. And really, if you ask me, at the end of the day, that is why the Doctor is just so absolutely fascinated with and protective of humanity. But we're getting a little off course here. Yeah, okay. So let me see. Okay. I think that's all I really have to say about the Doctor's character for the moment. Now let's get on to Clara. Now, Clara, of course, there's a lot of question marks floating around her. What's going on with her? What is her connection to Oswin from Asylum of the Daleks? And just what the heck is going on here? Now, my major question with her is, all right, why exactly is Clara? All right, now we're introduced. We see that Clara is basically working in a bar, and she's also the governess to these two children. And she drops some hints that basically she sort of bluffed her way into this job just because she didn't want to be nothing but a barmaid. She wanted to do bigger and better things with her life. And that's all well and good. I mean, okay, Clara is obviously an extremely intelligent and creative and smart person. I can buy that she was able to bluff her way into a job as a governess to some rich dude. The question, of course, is then, if she did that, why did she take some time off from her job as a governess to go and serve drinks in a tavern? I mean, is she doing that to go back and sort of refresh herself? I don't want to forget where it is that I've come from. Is she good friends with the guy that owned the bar that we see briefly and the other waitresses? I mean, really, if she went through all this trouble to go and get this other life going on, why did she take time off it to go back to what is apparently her original life? It just seems to me like something that really should have been elaborated on. And of course, there's the question of, well, why does Clara bother chasing after the Doctor when they've only said, like, literally, you can count the number of sentences that they've exchanged with each other on your hands and still have fingers left over. And she is motivated to literally chase after this guy, climb on top of a coach? I don't know. This it seems like an attempt to sort of go back to what was going on with Rose, but it just doesn't work. This is somebody that she's barely spoken to and has no real reason to do this. It just doesn't work for me. Now, I have to give a lot of props, of course, to Jenna Louise Coleman. She really, really, really sells Clara. It's really is almost impossible not to like the character. She's a very pretty lady, comes across as very charming, very witty, somebody who really is obviously going to be a very good mix with the Doctor. But again, there's just how do I want to put this? I guess at the end of the day, it's as I keep saying, this just really feels like a little bit too much of a retread of what we went through with Rose. There's a lot of stuff about Clara that just doesn't quite make sense. Now, granted, I think that we're going to find out obviously a lot more about her, about what's going on here as the season rolls on. So I don't really know how much of a black mark I can use how much of that I can really count as a black mark against this episode. But I just, at the end of the day, feel that the character's introduction, while well done, probably could have been done a little bit better. Again, it's really just mostly the retread and the details of what's exactly going on with Clara's current life and her current situation not being made 100% clear that really, I think, most work against it. Oh, and one thing, now discussing some of this, since we brought up some of the plot-related questions. Okay, so Clara falls out of the sky from a great height, and there's basically no visibly obvious damage to her body. Look, I'm not going to be an expert on like forensics or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure if people fall from a really great height and land on stone or frozen ground or whatever that was, they tend to go splat. I think I even heard about a fellow who fell off a skyscraper, and somebody who saw it literally witnessed the guy's brain bounce out of his skull. But again, sometimes you just sort of have to go with things in stories like Doctor Who. And I kind of feel bad for the dad in this story. This is going to be the second governess in 2 years that has died on his property in a accident. Well, okay, yes, it was an accident. Apparently, the governess really did just, the first mean governess apparently did just drown in a pond on accident. or something, I guess. And well, maybe not. That was something that I was a little clear on. Did Simeon have that woman drown? Was it just a coincidence? And if they needed a frozen body like that, why did it take like 50 years? I mean, he became rich and powerful and all this other stuff. Why couldn't he have just had somebody thrown in water and frozen to death during wintertime? But anyway, going back to this, so that's 2 dead governesses in the span of 2 years. One of whom was a young pretty girl that the dad was obviously extremely attracted to. So there's pretty much no way this family isn't going to be dogged by horrible, malicious rumors for the rest of their days. Merry Christmas. Oh, darn, there's one? Oh, yes. I almost forgot. The most important thing that's going on here that I really, really wanted to talk about. Now, I'm not going to claim to be the most hardcore Doctor Who fan out there, but I'm reasonably well versed on my Doctor Who lore, and I'm sure anybody else who is also in that position was just flipping out at the very end when they mentioned the Great Intelligence and the London Underground, not the musical act, but the actual London Underground. And the idea of the Doctor saying, like, going, the Great Intelligence. Why does that sound familiar? Like, seriously, Doctor, you've forgotten? I mean, really, dude? Honestly? Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, then you might want to go and look up the old Doctor Who episode, The Web of Fear. Now, if you don't want to run into any kind of potential spoilers, if you want to be completely fresh for what's probably coming down the pike for the rest of the season, then you might just want to skip that and take the episodes as they come. But yeah, this is well, it looks like they're going to be delving back into some of the old Doctor Who lore, some of the very, very old Doctor Who lore, and I, for one, am thrilled because, well, let's face it, the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who is on the horizon, so delving back into old Doctor Who lore is just only fitting. I cannot help but imagine what we're going to see as we build up to the big 50th anniversary. I am just envisioning a massive cornucopia of treats for the longtime Doctor Who fans. I mean, just the possibilities really just boggle the mind. I think this is going to be absolutely fantastic and just mind-blowing when we really get into the 50th anniversary celebration. But anyway, folks, while not without its flaws, this is still a pretty entertaining Doctor Who episode. There's some really great acting. The music, of course, is used beautifully. Oh man, I almost forgot. I can't believe I almost did this. I did not say one word until now about Ian McKellen as the voice of the Snowmen. I mean, come on, it's Ian McKellen. I really don't know what more needs to be said about that. I mean, the man is truly one of the greatest living British actors. I mean, you don't put Sir in front of somebody's name unless there's somebody who's really top notch. And I mean, come on, Gandalf, Magneto, so many other roles outside of geekiness. It's just, real seriously, it's Ian McKellen. You don't really need to say anything more than that. But yeah, at the end of the day, this episode has some flaws, but it's still a pretty entertaining Doctor Who episode. I have no doubt at all that Jenna Louise Coleman is going to be great. She's going to be a lot of fun, I can already tell. And there is just so much to look forward to for Doctor Who fans in 2013. It's going to be great, folks. I cannot wait to get on and enjoy this ride. Anyway, that's all I have for you this time. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.